Yeah, Kobe didn't live forever. No, he didn't. I mean, think about, but even then, not even your, think about your role models not living forever. Think of it also in the metaphorical sense. So, for example,
you trying to make a difference, you're going to get shot.
You're going to get shot. If you make a difference, you will get shot. But I'm thinking about it in terms of, think about who it is that you look up to, and kind of like pattern yourself after. For example, is anybody in here a musician, by chance? Anybody play guitar? Yeah. So I was talking about this in my 10th grade class the other day. There's a band, Pro Jam. Some of you have probably heard of Pro Jam before. Came from the 90s. They're still around. And they had this song called Yellow Ledbetter. And it's an interesting song because, first off, if you can understand a word that the singer is singing, let me know. It's just mumbled. But it still sounds pretty good, though. But when you listen to the song, it sounds so much like if you just added a little bit of analog to it, it would sound like Jimi Hendrix wrote it from way back in the 60s. Now, why does it sound like Jimi Hendrix wrote it? Well, because the guitarist was a huge fan of Jimi Hendrix. And so I imagine that the first several songs that he wrote, he probably wrote and played like Hendrix would play it, because that's his model. How do I play it? Well, I play it the way Jimmy played it, because I love the way Hendrix played it. And then after a while, so the intro of Yellow Ledbetter, it sounds like a Hendrix song. Now, I was thinking about that because it didn't come out for a few records into their career. But I remember thinking at the time, I bet this is like one of their first songs, you know? And so the other day I got curious. Last week I got curious and looked it up and just typed in Yellow Ledbetter demo. And sure enough, it was a song from their first demo that they came out with before they ever even got signed. It was one of the first songs they ever wrote. And so that makes sense, because the first songs they write, they pattern after the people who they admire, who they look up to. When you listen to their other stuff, it's nowhere near Hendrix. It doesn't sound like Hendrix at all. You might hear like a little bit of a fill here and there and go, that's a Hendrix-esque thing. But eventually your heroes have to die. You have to overcome your heroes. Heroes don't last forever, neither do parents. In other words, we look at our parents when we're growing up, like, for those of you who, is anybody stronger than your dad when you're growing up? Your dad's the strongest person in the world, you know? And then it gets, eventually, all of you will get to a point where you're going to look at your dad and you're going to see this frail older guy who's going to need your help to lift boxes and stuff like that. It's going to be like, what the hell? This was the the strongest person I ever knew, you know? Or even your mom, you know? You see your mom, you'll see her get frail and old and start to kind of decline as the years go by. And so they're not who they used to be. In other words, they're not you might look back on who they used to be, but you're going to see them and go, wow, they've declined. Not in a bad way. But conversely, there are those times when you find out that your parent's character is not what you thought it was. You know? In other words, you find out that when they were younger, they were a certain way that is completely contrary to who you see them as today. And all of a sudden, it's like you find out, oh my gosh, my parents are mortal. My parents are humans. They're just like anybody else. And that kind of messes us up a little bit because we look at them as being almost like super people. You know? And at first, that kind of manifests itself sometimes in our teenage years as anger. Oh my God, you're a hypocrite. I can't believe you that we get angry about it. But when you really internalize it and you realize, man, someday if you have kids, that's going to be you. It's going to be in the reverse. You know? And even if we think like, no way, man, my kids are going to know everything about me. Well, then are you really creating a good role model for them? Because the idea about the role model is that the role model is perfect. You don't have kids, perhaps, but somebody else is going to. And so the situation then kind of just gets shucked off onto society in the same way. But just like you've got this idea out in the intellectual world for Socrates of like a perfect chair, and then we model our chairs off after the idea of a perfect chair. If you don't aim for the perfect, you're never going to get the great. If you don't aim for the perfect, you're never going to get the good. Same is true about the archetypes. We have this idea of what a perfect hero is supposed to be, what they're supposed to look like, and how they're supposed to behave. And so you aim at that 100%. And if you only get 70%, that's still pretty good. But if you're aiming at 70%, you're getting 40%, let's say. That's not so good. And if you're aiming at 50%, then you only get 25%, and that's terrible. You know, we can't aim at the lowest version of something. We have to aim towards the ideal of it. And for a lot of people, our parents kind of represent the ideal of something. And so if you present yourself to your kids with all of your flaws and all of your problems, and I'm not saying you should tell them that you're perfect, but I'm just saying if they don't have like 100% to look up to when they're younger, well then don't be surprised that when they get to be a certain age, especially the teenage years, they're only aiming at 15–20%. Because the model they had was only 30% or 40% when they're growing up. If that makes sense. You know? So there's something to be said that we shouldn't, and by the way, having said that, the perfect is the enemy of the great. Meaning oftentimes, just because something isn't perfect, it's only good or great, we get angry with it and go, well, we have to change everything now. No, it's still pretty great. It's still pretty good. Doesn't mean we should completely destroy everything that's around it just so we can try to build up something that we think is going to be better. We can tweak and improve, of course. But we shouldn't toss out the old just because it's not perfect. We shouldn't get angry and frustrated just because it's not perfect. We should understand it for what it is. It's a building block on top of which to make things better. You know? Very, very rarely in life do better things come from just destroying everything and starting all over again. You know? Whatever that thing is, even if it's about your character. Oftentimes people will decide, you know what? New year, new me. Even that statement is going to be destructive because it's a new year. Yeah, I suppose so. It's an arbitrary line, but a new you. How about a better you? How about something? How about a you that more approximates or more approaches perfection? Well, nobody's perfect. That's true, but does that mean we should accept that? Shouldn't we aim at perfection so that even if we come up short, you know, we're still pretty good. You know, it's an interesting thing to me. I saw a year or two ago or so. I saw somebody I knew on Instagram, and they posted something to the effect about how nobody's perfect and we should expect perfection out of people. And then I was kind of looking at some of their old pictures, and they had a post up there that said something like, "Aim for the stars, because even if you miss, you're still up in the heavens." You see the contradiction there. You know, should you aim for the stars or should you not? Should you aim for perfection or not? Because if you miss perfection, you still land on great. If you miss the stars, you still end up in heaven. But we use this idea of nobody's perfect as a license, as an excuse to not be perfect ourselves. You know, will you be perfect? No. But can you be great? Only if you aim at the perfection. You know? So, questions? We haven't really touched the quote yet. But it does apply in those things. You know, waiting is painful. Okay, but waiting for what? Name it. It doesn't matter. Some of you right now are going through a lot of pain waiting for this discussion to be over. You know? Forgetting is painful. Yeah, that's true. Forgetting is painful too, especially when you understand, like when we say things like, forget the past. Forget it. Just forget it. Okay, I'm going to forget the past and I'm just going to be happy. You know? Two things that you can't command, along with optimism. You can't command these things. And besides which, if you forget the past, there's a difference between forgetting the past and holding it against people. Why is it that our parents screw up? Because they're mortal. Because they're humans. You know? Yeah, it's a fact of life. We're human also. We're also mortal, which is the same reason that we make mistakes that we shouldn't be making ourselves. All of us, we do this. Again, not as a license to do it, but just an awareness of that. And so, should we forget the past and forget the screw-ups? No. If you did something bad, you should feel guilty about it. But you shouldn't let that guilt stop you from moving forward and doing better. You should use the guilt to motivate you to do better. I don't want to do that again because I remember how I felt when I did it before. You know, so I don't want to have that feeling again. So therefore, I'm going to use the guilt in a positive way. You know, all of these things are learning experiences. You know? But not knowing whether you should wait or whether you should forget, he says, is the worst kind of suffering. It's just that in-between. Have you ever been waiting for an answer, and you don't care what the answer is anymore? You just want the answer? Yes, no, where it's going to go? Because it's that in-between part that's terrible. You know? Yeah. Yeah. It's that in-between part that for a lot of people that's terrible. Because we feel like we just want to get on with life. Because if we're not doing it quickly, we feel like we're wasting time. We feel like we're losing time, we're losing life. But yet we don't know what to do with the time that we gain except for to kill it, oftentimes. You know? It's that in-between part, oftentimes, that the growth comes from. I won't go on very long with that. Right. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Easy. What's that? Happy Thursday.